Lexus is looking to rebrand itself, and what better way to do that than with the new 2014 IS. Now in the luxury segment, a lot of automakers really stake their claim with their compact sports sedans. Take the BMW 3 Series for instance. Now, Lexus is targeting exactly that vehicle with the new IS. And their reasoning is they don't want a vehicle that just puts down the numbers and gets the job done. They really want to improve its driving feel, a dynamic car that connects the driver to the car and to the road. Now, as you can see, the new 2014 IS isn't quite done yet, but Lexus has invited us here to test out the new model, both the IS 250 and IS 350 in a prototype form on a large autocross course. But before we get to that, let's take a moment to talk about the 2014 Lexus IS's design. Now, there is not a lot to go on here, and that's because Lexus has cleverly camoed these cars up. What we can see, however, is important. For starters, it has these much more dramatic headlights on it with a lot of swoops and curves in them, and the same goes for a lot of the rest of the front bodywork on the car. While the proportions are overall the very same, and it was a handsome car in the past, we're really seeing this new big Lexus spindle grille, and it's obvious that they're trying to make the car have a lot more presence on the road. But a final and more interesting item is something that when Lexus put together, they realized everyone needs a part of a car they can really talk about. Everyone's going to be talking about, and it's right here. The central gauge display on the dash actually takes items from the LFA supercar, and you can press a little button, you'll see this mechanical gauge move over, and all kinds of electronic gauges on the screens will slide down on the side, and it just looks incredibly high-tech. Driving the 2014 IS and comparing it against the previous generation car, the differences aren't really as obvious as you would think at first. And part of the reason is because the old car actually feels a little bit more nimble, and then this new car actually feels sort of a bit more solid. And that's misleading because you think, well, it's just kind of gotten a bit more luxurious and heavier, and it's really not as much fun to drive. But it's when you approach the limits of grip that it's actually most noticeable, and that's not too hard today here on this soaking wet autocross course we're driving on. On the limit, the new car is actually a lot more responsive to small inputs, and that's really important because you don't want to be making big changes at those times. So in many ways, this really is a best of both worlds scenario. The car actually feels like a more stable and solid luxury car, which is really what you want, and at the same time, it will dance much nicer than the old one will, and is really just a lot easier to control. Now, Lexus is not giving any specifics on the engines of this car yet, but what they will say is that it comes equipped with a new 8-speed automatic transmission, which is the first use of their 8-speed transmission in a regular IS model, similar to what the ISF model actually has. The downside is that it doesn't quite shift as fast as I would like. That's not to say it's slow. For an automatic, it's quite fast. It just doesn't always downshift as much as you would like, especially in an IS 350 model like we're driving right now with the Sport Plus mode setting. You would think that Sport Plus would pretty much just drive it down to the lowest gear possible, but then again, maybe we'll have to wait for a new ISF for that. As though the outside of the car didn't make it obvious enough, on the inside, it is definitely a prototype with most of what you can see all covered up. There are, however, a few small items I can talk about now, starting with the drive mode selector. Now that will come on the IS from now on. We've seen it in a lot of other Lexus models, and it'll come with an Eco, Normal, and a Sport button, whereas certain models like this IS 350 with the F Sport package will get a Sport Plus. So whereas the Sport will actually just firm up the throttle, the Sport Plus will actually firm up the steering as well as the suspension for a lot more fun. On the road, it still is very much a smooth and calm luxury driving experience. Now, one item I particularly like to point out are the brand new seats. Not only are they much better bolstered, but they actually sit 20 millimeters lower in the car. So that will actually, make you feel like you're driving more of a sports car. But perhaps more important for most people is the fact that you're lower and there's a lot more headroom now. And when you're 6'1" or anything taller than that, it really is a much more airy cabin now as a result. And another final unique feature I have to point out are the controls for the temperature display. You just slide your finger up to increase the temperature and slide your finger down to decrease the temperature, and it actually works that easy, unlike some of the other similar systems we've seen before. If there is one way I'd like to see Lexus improve upon the new IS, it would be through a Sport Plus mode that just has more plus. Right now, it does take it a level beyond the regular sport mode, but it could be more aggressive than that. It could sound a little louder. They could tune up the exhaust note a bit. And again, I already mentioned the transmission. If you could just hold gears a little bit lower and just be a bit more aggressive, this car is so sophisticated in many ways that it almost needs to really accentuate those hard aspects to really bring out the drama and the fact that it really can't handle. So is the 2014 Lexus IS the most dynamic car in the segment? And is it better than the BMW 3 Series? Well, to be honest, no, it's not. But I'll tell you why that's not such a bad thing. Now, it doesn't feel quite as chuckable as the old car, but it is actually easier to control at the limits, especially when you're really pushing the envelope. Arguably, it's Lexus's hallmark qualities that mask just what a dynamic car this is. So, if I'm going to criticize it for not being quite as hard-edged as a BMW 3 Series because it's more refined, well, that's a pretty tough criticism to make. For more on this review and others like it, visit AutoGuide.com.